Hello, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for checking out the feedback loop for today. Again, I do apologize. The intent had been to talk about the game economies that leave the game and go on to do other things, as far as like CSGO gambling and Diablo auction house and gold selling and all that kind of stuff. I need a little bit more time to prepare for that one, so I'm going to push that to next week. This week, I want to talk a little bit more about something else that came out today. It's this wonderful, wonderful little thing from the Electronic Software Association. Their 2017 Sales, Demographic, and Usage Data, Essential Facts for the Video Game Industry. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is that hey, look at that, Dark Souls crashed. I wanted to go through and show people, this is my case study for all of you wonderful folks on stats manipulation and telling the story that you want to tell with statistics. When I first saw this a little bit earlier today, I was kind of going through it, and I realized I am absolutely an unapologetic nerd because I read this kind of shit for fun. So, you know, hopefully it's something that is of use to some people, but I would assume that at this point, you know, if you've stuck around the channel for this long, you're interested in some of this stuff too. So when I was reading through this earlier today, I was absolutely stunned by how bad some of the stuff that they've put in here actually is, and how bothersome some of this stuff is. Now, if you don't know, the Electronic Software Association, or sorry, Entertainment Software Association, I keep getting the words mixed up. Entertainment Software Association is a group that is based around the interests of developers and publishers. So this group it represents Electronic Arts, Bethesda, Activision, Microsoft, Sony, Take-Two Interactive, you know, a whole bunch of these big companies in the game industry. And this is not to be confused with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the EFF, which is the one that fights for the consumer benefit. So you kind of have these two competing groups that like to fight back and forth. And of course, they each have their own agenda, what they're trying to push as the truth of the matter and what's important. So let's take a quick look at how some of the stats that they push through. This is, again, they do this every year. They're gonna talk about all of the wonderful things that are going on in gaming. But what I want you to keep in the back of your mind whenever you're looking at any stat, and that includes ones that I put up, right? When we're talking about refunds and stuff like that, always question it. Always wonder in the back of your mind, what position is this person coming from? Because they're picking stats that fit their narrative, right? Ideally, if you're somebody who's a very analytical sort of person, you're going to look for the stats, you're going to find the stats, and then you're going to build your narrative based on what the stats tell you. But that's not always what happens. So we start down, taking a quick look into the report, and the first thing you always try to do whenever you're looking at any information from from any game company, anything, look for the fine print. Always look for the fine print. Right here, the study is the most in-depth and targeted survey of its kind, gathering data from more than 4,000 American households and surveying the heads of and most frequent gamers within each household about their video game playing habits and attitudes. So first off, ESA is an American group. So we're talking about the United States. Now that said, you can kind of look at the world in a kind of a grand scheme. It is something where you can kind of extrapolate from one country to another, as long as they're similar economically, right? So your first world countries are all going to probably be pretty close until you get to some areas like China, Japan, things like that, where there are some significant cultural differences. But chances are Canada's very similar to this. Chances are the UK, Germany, France, you know, a lot of those countries are going to be very similar. 4,000 American households, right? So this is statistically significant data. It's a valid study. Surveying the heads of and most frequent gamers within each household. So they contacted 4,000 different groups, and they talked to whoever is the head of the house, and they talked to whoever is the most frequent gamer in the house. Or most frequent gamers. We're not really sure. Now, I'm going to come back to this very particular piece of information. Most frequent gamers frequently throughout this because they never define it. They never tell you, what does most frequent gamer mean? Which is actually kind of an important detail. So first off, we jump down here. We've got 67% of US households own a device that is used to play video games. Okay, that's fairly straightforward. Right, 67% of houses. So I had done a little bit of stats stuff over here. Just for giggles, 67% of 4,000 is 2,600 that own that kind of device for that purpose. So the US population is 325 million, give or take, and 218 million have a device that is used for video games. Not a device that can play video games, but one that's what it's used for. And 65% of US households are home to at least one person who plays 3 or more hours of video games a week. Now there's kind of a discrepancy here. So only 2% of US households own a device that is used to play video games by someone who plays between 0 and 3 hours a week. Doesn't that strike you as maybe just a little bit weird? Kind of an odd statement to make. Right? We're going to say that this many households have at least somebody that plays 3 hours or more. But there's only a 2% difference between the ones that have gaming devices and the ones that play 3 hours or more. It's just a very odd kind of thing. It doesn't make a lot of sense at first blush. Moving on from there, this one has always bothered me, and I've seen this in a couple of different studies. And I wish that I had Adobe. I wish I could actually just kind of highlight what I've got here on the screen. This is absolutely one of the most painful statistics that I've ever seen peddled in video games. And I've tried to figure out where it comes from. There seems to be this bent towards marketing to women. And that's fine. Absolutely. If you want to use accurate stats, that's fine. But there's some misleading going here, trying to even out the male-female population in gaming, which is questionable. So the average gamer is 35 years old. Totally fine. They talked about gamers and they said, how old are you? And that's where they get that information. Women age 18 and older represent a significantly greater portion of the game buying populace or population than boys under the age of 18. Well, what the hell does that mean? What kind of nonsense stat is that number? It's the same thing. So you may hear another one. Periodically, you'll hear another stat that is quoted that says that 80% of accidents happen within 20 minutes of the home. And this is a fairly common one. It's to try and signify that the city driving is more dangerous, and people when they've been driving for a longer period of time, they're paying more attention, or they're on highways, or whatever the case, whatever you want to try and push. But it has a very, very simple answer. 80% of driving also happens within 20 minutes of the home. So the stat of 80% of accidents happen within 20 minutes of the home is completely irrelevant, because it talks about it doesn't talk about, it ignores where driving also happens. If the same amount of driving happens within 20 minutes of the home as the number of accidents happen within 20 minutes of the home, then the stat is completely worthless. It doesn't tell you anything. So a stat like this, that women age 18 and older represent a significantly greater portion of the game buying population than boys under the age of 18. So what they're saying is that there are more women over 18 that play video games than boys under 18. Well, I should hope so. The population is roughly 50-50 men and women. Boys under the age of 18, I had a stat up here, and I must have gotten rid of it. Boys under the age of 18 are like somewhere between 10 and 15%, or sorry, 15 and 20%. Good gracious, I'm losing my mind here. People under the age of 18 are around 20% of the population in general. This is just it. What it comes down to is this is a meaningless stat. This is a stat that has no value to it. Because what is the relationship between women over 18 and boys under 18? You know, other than some smarmy jokes that you can make. Anyways, you have to question, why are they telling you this? What is so important about this piece of information? What is the reason why they would tell you a stat that has absolutely no value, no meaning whatsoever to anything at all? It's just, it's a nonsense stat. It bothers me a lot. Total consumer spend on the video game industry was $30.4 billion in 2016. I find that a very brazen estimate, primarily because it's very difficult to figure out precisely how much Valve makes. They are not a member of the ESA, I don't believe. I took a look earlier today and I did not see Valve listed. Valve is probably somewhere in the area of probably 4 to 4.5 billion at this point, I'm sure. I think they were quoted at 3.5 by Steam Spy as an estimate of how much they made in the previous year. But that also doesn't take into account the amount that they make on marketplace transactions, which is a lot. 1 in 3, we'll talk about VR. That shows up a little bit later in the study. But some of these numbers are interesting, and some of them have a certain amount of value to them. And I'm gonna skip past this because all of these numbers are going to be in the full report later on. So there are an average of 1.7 gamers in each game-playing U.S. household. Okay, potentially useful information. I mean, a 1.7 obviously is, if you take 2 or 3 houses, you're going to have 2 gamers in each, or some houses where you have none. It's the same kind of thing as people that have 1.5 children on average. Obviously, you cannot have a half a child. But it goes in to talk about the number of households that have different devices. And this one really threw me for a loop. So 97% of those 4,000 households that they talked about have a personal computer, but only 81% of them have a smartphone. Doesn't that strike you as odd? I'm not sure you can really buy many non-smartphones at this point. So what was the demographic of the people they asked? We'll get into that a little bit later. But it's a very interesting thing, right? And 61% have a wireless device, which appears to be a tablet of some kind. And okay, fair enough. 48% have a dedicated game console. So roughly half of people have a console, and pretty close to all people have a computer of some kind. Dedicated handheld device at 22%, and 11% have a virtual reality device. Now, this is where I've started to get a little bit cagey about this report, and the like I mentioned, an ulterior motive that you always have to have in the back of your mind. Why are they telling you these numbers? So pretty close to 100% of those 4,000 people that they asked, or 4,000 households they asked, have a computer. 11% have a virtual reality device. Now, you have to be very careful on VR, because VR is more than just something on your computer. It's more than just PlayStation VR. It's more than just Oculus and the Vive. There's also, where do I have it? There's also this wondrous little device right here, which is the Samsung Gear VR. So you take your phone and you plug your phone into this thing like that, you put it on your head, and you can experience a certain degree of VR. It's not, over the top amazing, but it is a thing. It is something that exists. And this one, I think it normally costed about $100. I got mine for free because it was included with my phone. So the numbers of people that have a VR device of some kind is actually something that is artificially inflated, and has been artificially inflated for quite some time now, because they were giving them away as a part of your signing up for a contract, right? That was kind of how a lot of that stuff worked. So 11% virtual reality devices strikes me very obviously as an inflated number to begin with. The idea that that 1 in 10 people that have a computer also have VR is absolutely ridiculous, completely and totally ridiculous. Now, I didn't go and look up what the different stats are and how many people have bought VR, but Oculus and the Vive are really low. PlayStation VR is supposed to be doing really well. Samsung Gear VR is by far the biggest set thing, but anybody can go online and print off something and cut it out of a piece of cardboard or buy them off of Amazon or whatever, these little things that you just slide your phone into and hope for the best. They cost $30, $20 to do that. So by not defining what virtual reality device means, because this is a virtual reality device. This is a Samsung Note 5, not the Note 7, not the one that explodes. It's Note 5. That's a VR device. But they obviously didn't count it in smartphones. There has to be something else going on here. But when you don't define what VR device means, the numbers become far less helpful. They become far, far less useful to you in trying to figure out the real value here. So the average gamers by group. This one, I mean, I don't really have a lot to contend with here. We're looking at the people under 18 that are playing games, predominantly male. 18% of male or men are playing, 18% of, I would assume, actually, this is the total population now that I'm looking at the numbers. You'd have to add all 4 of them to get your 100%. Anyways, the clear delineation here, though, is to try and talk about what the difference between men and women are in how they play games. So men are playing games more at 18, more at, or more under 18, more at 18 to 35, more at 36 to 49, and the same, give or take, at 50 plus. Fine, whatever. I don't have a big problem with that. But it also, just for giggles, it skews the averages up here as well a little bit. If you want to talk about the average age of a particular gamer, a particular person, if your sample size is bigger, it could adjust what your average is. Possible. You never know. Women age 18 and older, again, we come back to the same stat, represent a significantly greater portion of the regular game-buying population than boys under the age of 18. I should hope so, because there are a lot more women that are over 18 than boys under 18. A lot. Oh, there are tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions, 100 million more in the United States, women over 18 than boys under 18. Again, a totally meaningless stat of no real value. And it makes you wonder, okay, what's the purpose here? Why are they asking that question? We start to get into a little bit more talking about what are the gamers playing. And this brings me back to that small print piece that was at the beginning that I wanted to kind of mention again. So 53% of the most frequent gamers play multiplayer games at least once a week, spending an average of 6 hours playing with others online and 5 hours playing with others in person. There are a lot of qualifications on that statement, aren't there? That's a very precise group of people. So first off, it comes under the most frequent gamers category, which we already don't know what that is. We don't know, does most frequent gamer mean that this is a person that plays more than an hour, more than 3 hours, more than 6 hours of gaming every week? What is the definition of that person? Do we actually know? And it's not defined, not anywhere in here that I could find it. So the most frequent gamers, they're playing multiplayer games about half the time. And they're playing at least once a week, spending an average of 6 hours playing with others online and 5 hours playing with others in person. So what they've done, okay, what this stat represents is another stat of zero value, because what they've done is they've taken people of different categories and lumped them together. Okay, so the 53% of most frequent gamers that are playing multiplayer games at least once a week are the people that are playing 6 hours with other people online and people playing 5 hours with others in person. So this is your couch co-op and your online multiplayer. It has to be. Unless they're going with an even narrower definition, which is to say that these 53% of the most frequent gamers playing multiplayer games are both playing at least an average of 6 hours with others online and 5 hours playing with others in person. Do you see where I'm going with this? Like, this is such a weird statement to try to put together. It makes you wonder, what exactly are they trying to say, right? And how manipulative stats can be. We have so many different ways of interpreting what this means. But at the strictest definition of how grammar works, right? And what the statement is that they've put together here is that, again, half of the most frequent gamers are playing couch co-op at least 5 hours and 6 hours online with other people. Okay. What about all the people that only play with others online and don't play couch co-op? What about all the people that play couch co-op only and don't play with others online? Surely the people that play only one of the two of those things for multiplayer, or the people that, combined with the people that play single player, is greater than half. Just strikes me as weird. Again, just weird. 43% of gamers are playing with friends. 21% are playing with family members. 18% play with parents, because apparently parents are not family members. We can take from this that family members is meant to include, or meant to be primarily brothers, sisters, cousins, that kind of family member, because parents are differentiated. And 17% playing with their spouse. Also not family. Separated out for some reason, not really sure why. Very, very bizarre. And then a couple of very feel-good stats that are, yeah, fine, whatever. They're, again, fairly meaningless, but, 54% of the most frequent gamers, again, that same number, we still don't know what the definition is, say that video games help connect them with their friends. Of course they do, just like a phone, just like a chat room, just like any other thing. 45% say it helps their family spend time together. Are you sure that 45% say it helps their family spend time together? Because only 21% are playing with family. 18% are playing with parents, 17% with spouse. You can't just add all of this together, or can you? 41, 21, so we got 62, 18, 70, 80, another 17, another 3%. Very bizarre. So if you're adding these three up here, if you're adding your family, your parents, and your spouse, you've got 39, 46, 56. 56% of people are playing with family of some kind, but only 45% say it helps their family spend time together. Okay. Very interesting. Very bizarre. Very silly, almost. 29% of people are playing shooters, most played, multiplayer genres. 28% are playing casual games. 27% are playing action games. Shooters are actually rather well defined. That's a fairly easy thing that you can talk about. 28% casual. Well, okay. I'm a relatively casual Overwatch player. I play now and then. Does that count? Or is it the game? Now they're talking about genres. Well, fine. So what does casual include? Is that Facebook games? Does that include Bejeweled on my phone? Does that include what? Action is equally meaningless. Little bit of a problem. And then we come to the VR. So here we are, page 9. We're going to start talking about VR, virtual reality. It's got it all to itself. And this is what made me wonder, what's the motive really with the stats that they're pulling here. 63% of the most frequent gamers are familiar with VR. So they know what it is, right? That's kind of it. 15% have used it in the last year. Okay. So again, we haven't defined VR. We've just said VR itself. And then we're going to actually talk down here about the average age of a PC, console, mobile VR headset owner. Okay, so now we actually have some kind of delineation that says we're including all of those different groups. So this is including your HTC Vive, your Oculus Rift, your PSVR, and Samsung Gear VR as well. Average age is 31. Okay, fine. Over 90% of PC and console VR owners are satisfied with their headset purchase. Doesn't that strike you as really, really high? 90%. When we're in a market, and now this also, by the way, this you'll notice that they removed mobile VR from that stat. Isn't that kind of a weird thing? This whole page just stinks to me. So what you would do if you were somebody who was wanting to maybe talk a little bit positively about virtual reality is you want the numbers to say some very specific things to encourage people, because Microsoft is a part of the ESA. They're a very big lobbying body in the ESA. So is Sony. They want to talk very positively about their stuff. So if you wanted to, say, reduce the age, the average age of VR owners, you might include mobile VR, wouldn't you? Because a lot of people getting their new fancy cell phones got a Samsung Gear VR. A lot of younger people would have done that. That might drop your average age of the people that own VR. But then when you're going to talk about the satisfaction of things, well, you know, the people that got this used it once and then hung it up on their guitar rack and haven't used it in 4 months are very unlikely to say that they're satisfied with their headset purchase, aren't they? So if you want to talk about satisfaction, you might remove mobile from that instead of keeping the same baseline throughout your entire market study document. Again, very just it smells. This page smells. 1 in 3 of the most frequent gamers said they were likely to buy VR in the next year. Likely to buy what VR? Because on this very page, we've already confused PC, console, and mobile in 2 different stats. And now we're going to talk about somebody that's likely to buy VR. So what does that mean? Because VR can be, I already have a phone, I'm just going to go buy a Google Cardboard. Or I'm going to go buy an HTC Vive, which is $800. Still, I assume. I don't think they've dropped their price like Oculus did. 1 in 3 are likely to buy VR in the next year. But, okay, 1 in 3 is 33%. But only 15% of those people have used VR. Maybe you're starting to see why I feel like this page smells so much. It is way over the top positive about VR. And this feels wrong. It feels fake. So most common VR activities, a lot of this stuff makes a great deal of sense. Playing a single player VR game, 74% are using VR to do that on PC and console. On mobile, only 48% are. And that makes a great deal of sense. Because, yeah, there's less games on mobile. Explore a destination, fine, right about even, that's okay. Watch a movie. Now, this is where people lie, because in liars, that's how that works. But nobody's going to admit to watching porn on their VR headset, because that's what people do. Of course they do. That's what will make VR succeed, is the porn industry. It has nothing to do with games. The games are nice. That's lovely. All these experiences like climbing Mount Everest and getting eaten by a shark and all that, that's all nice. But 27 to 30%? Liars. Liars, all of you. Show someone else VR. This one bothers me. This one actually really bothers me because I don't believe it. And I obviously, where it comes to surveys and studies and stuff like that, you have to take it with a certain grain of salt because you're asking people questions. You're expecting some kind of an answer from them. And they don't always understand what you're talking about. But the idea that a higher percentage of people are using the HTC Vive or the Oculus Rift to show people what VR is like than are using this cheapy thing that they can just throw in a backpack and take wherever the hell they want feels wrong. There's something that doesn't really measure up there myself, but I can't really criticize it. It's not that obvious enough that I say there has to be a problem, but it seems weird that the numbers are not reversed. I would expect a higher number of people that would be using that to show off VR and try, just give people a general idea of what it does, right? What it's all about. Learn about a topic, roughly even, play a multiplayer video game. Fine. Again, same kind of ratio disparity here between multiplayer and single player playing of an actual game. Virtual desktop. Okay. Again, fine. I'm really not sure because I've used the Gear VR. I'm really not sure how the 17% are actually using the Gear VR as a virtual desktop because you can't really do that. It doesn't really give you much in the way of document. I mean, it's junk. It's garbage. It's very, it's fun. It's fun to play around with, but it's not, a high tech device here. And socialize with others in a virtual way. Fine. No problem. Moving on to parents and video games. 90% of parents are present when their child acquires a video game. I have a question. What's the definition of child? Now, historically, and from a legal perspective, 18 and under. Or more correctly, up to 18. Are we really going to believe that 90% of parents are present when their child from 0 to 17.99 years old, that the parent is present when their child is buying a video game? Really? Or more correctly, when they're acquiring a video game. You think mom and dad are really, really present when little Johnny downloads the latest Angry Birds game on his phone? Really? This strikes me as bullshit. But this could be bullshit on the part of the parents. This could be one of those things where you have to try and take into account how little someone wants to lie about their own stuff, even though it might be an anonymous survey, right? An anonymous survey still doesn't get people past the fact that they don't want to admit they're doing something wrong. 9 out of 10 parents require their child to ask permission before buying a video game. This one has exactly the same problem. How old is a child? At what point is someone no longer considered a child? Are we going to make the differentiation between 12 and 13, where now it's a teenager and they're not a child anymore? These are important things to put into your stats document because without them, it is meaningless. It is of no value to say that 9 out of 10 parents require their child ask permission before buying a game. Because if you don't know what a child means, it's irrelevant. Little tricky, little problematic. 94% of parents pay attention to the video games played by their child. So 4% of parents are not present when their child acquires a video game, but they do pay attention to the video games played by their child. Really? We're gonna believe that? These are impossible numbers, folks. Impossible numbers. 71% of parents say that video games have a positive influence on their child's life. I don't know. I could say at this point that I want to believe that number. I want that to be true. 67% of parents play video games with their child at least once a week. I want that to be true. But if the rest of the numbers are bullshit on the page, how can I believe that it's true? You know, I want those numbers to be right. I want that many parents, that many percentage of parents to say that video games are good for their kids. That would be amazing. It's not true. It can't be true because they've already given us bullshit numbers. Why parents play video games with their kids? Fun for all of us. Good opportunity to socialize with the child. Child asked me to. Helps monitor what they're playing. And I enjoy playing video games as much as my child does. Okay, fine. Relatively okay. 85% of parents of children who regularly play video games are very familiar with the ESRB ratings. So, one of the partners in building this document, are they down at the bottom? Oh, maybe it hasn't loaded yet. Where is it? Where is it? Where are you guys? Oh, there we go. ESA Partners. The Entertainment Software Ratings Board, ESRB. Why do you suppose the ESRB might have some kind of desire to say that 85% of parents of children who regularly play video games are very familiar with the ESRB ratings? Okay. Of these parents, 96% are very confident that the ESRB ratings are accurate. So we don't have a number. We're going to break this number down twice. So, and again, this goes back to the sort of stats analogy that I was talking about how you have to be very careful in what you believe and what you, where the other side is coming from, because stats can be manipulated in so many different ways. 85% of parents of children who regularly play video games. This is already taking our 8,000 or 4,000 households and breaking it down several steps to where we have no idea how many people this is. This could be 50 people. Right? We talked about, you've got 4,000 homes. This could be only 50 people. And 85% of them know what the ratings are. 96% of those 85% are very confident that the ratings are accurate. Okay, this is a suspect claim. 94% find the parental control settings on video game consoles useful. Why is that there? What is that? Microsoft? Sony? Why is that on the study? Whatever. 75% limit their child's playing time, limit internet usage. Okay. Again, we've already established that none of these numbers have any value because you're already separating something down into several steps. Right? I don't know. I don't like it. The study then proceeds to break down slightly on Chrome. This is not a PDF that I could download myself. We've got all kinds of nonsense, but we go through the best-selling games of 2016 by units sold. Yeah, okay. I'm not really terribly concerned by that. It's basic NPD numbers. Best-selling video game super genres of 2016: shooters, action, role-playing, sports. So I have a question. Again, since I like to ask questions, didn't we, let me go up here again really quick. Most played multiplayer genres. So 28% casual. Casual is a genre they've established in their own study. And then we're going to go down and we're going to take a look at the most best-selling video game super genres by units sold. Now, it is plausible that they're simply deeming casual games anything that isn't sold. Free to play, it's possible. But again, it's not defined. It's a problem. It's an issue for giving stats on it. Purchasing, the average age of the most frequent game purchaser is 36 years old. All right. What does that mean? Who's the game purchaser? Because you just said that 90% or 90% of parents are there when their child acquires a video game. So some of those are game purchasers, but you're just buying it for yourself. I mean, this is another stat that doesn't really mean a whole lot. This is for the advertising. This is for making sure that the person buying it is the one that is marketed to in some way. Fine. I don't see a lot of value in the stat. Of those most frequent game purchasers, it's usually dad. 63% are male, 37% are female, 0% are something in the middle. Okay, I'm just saying. Most gamers feel that computer and video games provide more value for their money. What? What? You have to ask the question correctly. The title of this graph should be comparison of video games against other entertainment media for value for money. Not most gamers feel computer and video games provide more value for their money. Here's a bunch of percentages. So, what do you suppose this graph would look like if it was most movie enthusiasts feel that movies provide more value for their money? Most football fans feel that the NFL provides more value for their money. Do we see a problem? Do we see an issue here? Maybe? It's a meaningless chart again? Only half of gamers think that games provide the most value for money. The other half think that movies, music, and DVDs, which you can assume DVDs is meaning movies at home instead of movies in the theater, but again, not defined, not a whole lot of value there. 42% purchase new video games without having tried them. So 58% have played all of the video games they buy before they buy them. Seems a little high, doesn't it? Hey, whatever. 32% purchase new video games after downloading a trial or demo. This to me, this has to be empirically false. There are not that many demos out there. I play a lot of games, man. I play a lot of games. There are not that many demos, but hey, whatever. Again, whatever. 30% download games from online video game storefronts. Now that one is an interesting stat. It's a very interesting stat. 30% of the most frequent gamers, not all gamers, just the most frequent ones, use an online video game storefront. I've heard differently, and this is one that I want to actually look into. I'm very curious to see, because I don't believe that 70% of video games are still bought in retail markets. That is absolutely bollocks. There's no way. But it's an interesting number nonetheless. ESA is going to say that, you know, this is where things are going. Okay. They may want to be downplaying the role of Steam and GOG and all of these others. Recent digital and physical sales information. Wow, that's useful. So hang on. What do we have here? 2016, 74% is digital sales. Now that includes subscriptions and DLC and apps and social network stuff. But only 30% of the most frequent gamers download any games from an online video game storefront. This is one of, and I work in a stats-based environment. That's all that I'll say. I'm a business analyst. This is stuff that I deal with. I write reports, I write agreements, I do a lot of that kind of thing. I deal with this sort of stuff all the time, and I deal with people that want to manipulate facts, and they want exactly the stat that tells them what the story is that they had in mind before they started. If only 30% of the most frequent gamers, let's just say it's people that play more than 3 hours a week. I have no idea. They're buying something online. Doesn't say they're buying everything online, just that they're buying something. But then we're going to go and we're going to say that 74% of sales are digital format sales. These numbers are not even close. The numbers would have to be reversed and then some for digital and retail for this to actually function, for this to work. Now, a lot of people will buy retail online, buy from Best Buy and have it delivered, buy from Amazon and have it delivered, but that's not, okay, this is digital format. Online video game storefronts, to me, doesn't say Amazon. Amazon's not a video game storefront. Steam is a video game storefront. The PlayStation Store, the Xbox Store, Windows Store. These are online video game storefronts. That's what they're for. That's what they do. But okay. Factors influencing decisions to purchase video games. Quality of the graphics. I believe that. 67%. And I'm very disappointed in humanity for that. But that's fine. Whatever. Price, 65%. Video games have been the same price for a long time. Now, price may affect your desire to pay for DLC, for season pass, for microtransactions and all of that kind of wonderful stuff. But I don't imagine that price is a very big consideration on video games. Again, mostly they're the same price. It's been $60 for the last long time. Interesting story and premise, 59%. Okay. Online gameplay capability, 50%. Well, that at least matches up with that 53% earlier that play at least 6 hours a week of online with other people. Product is a continuation of a favorite game series, 48%. Interesting. Product is familiar to me from past experiences, based on a classic toy, video game or video arcade game, etc. So a franchise. So I recognize it. It's something that I have seen before. Okay. Again, not really a whole lot there that is of major value. Annual US video game content spend. They didn't define content. That's useful, isn't it? Now, content will probably be everything game related. So your microtransactions, your DLC, expansion packs, base game, all of that stuff, season pass, maps, nonsense. And total consumer spend on the video game industry was $30.4 billion in 2016. Okay. So the US spent $24 billion. On content. Oh, okay. Sorry, I mistook that for a brief moment. I was just about to start yelling. Okay, so 24.5 billion spent on content in the States, because they didn't come back and say total. See, oh, okay. These guys need to learn how to make a report. This is not that hard. If you put annual US video game content spend in your title, and then the next graph is total consumer spend on the video game industry, the assumption is that this is now worldwide. So where's the US qualifier? Oh my God. Unbelievable. It just pisses me off. So people have spent $24.5 billion in the States on content. They've spent $3.7 billion on hardware. And they spent $2.2 billion on accessories including VR. Why? Why is VR specifically outlined as part of accessories instead of its own line item? Primarily because the number would be really small. Just saying. This whole document stinks of VR. I understand. I know that people are excited. I understand that people that want VR, they want to experience it. They want to talk about it. They want to share it. They want to do all of this stuff. They think that VR is the next big thing. And maybe it will be 2 or 3 generations down the road. Maybe that'll happen. I could actually see it happening at some point. It's not here yet. And I understand that people want it to be, but this smells of an industry that is trying to convince the public and convince investors that VR is succeeding. And right now it is not. We have only one game that is actually what I would consider a AAA VR title. And that was Resident Evil. I know people talk about Elite Dangerous and they talk about some of these other different things that are potentially great games. And maybe they are. Maybe they're awesome. I haven't played any of those. I can't speak to that. But they are not content complete, full experiences like Resident Evil is. It's the only one so far. VR is not succeeding yet. It's still growing, and it's going to grow for a long time. It's going to take a while before it actually gets its own legs. But this, let's pretend that VR... So now, like, the person reading this is now associating VR with 2.2 billion. As though it's almost, geez, it's like half of what people spend on hardware. Okay. 80% of this could be controllers and cords and other shit that goes along with games. Memory cards, if those are still a thing in consoles, I don't really know. Does that count if you go and buy an external hard drive? Is that an accessory? This thing bothers me. Economic impact. There are 2,322 video game developer locations across all 50 states. 526 publisher locations across 44 states. Why not give the number across 50 states? Why does 44 states matter? Oh. This is what happens when you write a stats report. And the person you assign to the stats report is somebody who's just out of high school and doesn't know what they're doing. In total, there are 2,858 video game companies across 84% of the congressional districts in America. What? Let's go political with this. So there are 2,322 video game companies, video game developers across all 50 states. And there are 2,858 video game company locations across 84% of congressional districts. So what they've done is they've added the publishers and the developers together. And they said that based on those, they're 84% of the congressional districts in America. I would ask the question, why does that matter? But part of the reason why that matters is that this document is also going to be a lobbying document. Makes logical sense, I suppose. They're going to talk about how awesome all of the different things about video games are. They're going to put in big stat numbers that talk about how women over 18 are far and away more gamers than boys under 18. The voting age. Let's send this to all your congressmen and say, hey, maybe you want to give video games some scratch here and there. Isn't that painful? Isn't that just painful? There are now 65,678 workers directly employed at game software publishers and developer locations in the United States. Employees in the industry earned an average compensation of $97,000 per year in 2016. Average salaries always bother me because the executives make a lot of money. A lot of money. And so if you make $300,000 and somebody makes $50,000, you need 6 people to get your same wage. That one person that makes a ton more money is bringing that average up a lot. Okay, so you would need 6 people at the 50,000 in order to keep an average that is actually better. Average is the wrong number, basically, to use. You want to use something median or mean. U.S. video game company industry's value added to the U.S. GDP was more than $11.7 billion. So again, very political on this part. And then we end up with a bunch of things talking about the partners and who else was involved in this and different groups that do stats and do game developer stuff. And then you go through and you get to see all the different companies that are a part of the lobbying group that this exists for, right? Microsoft, big surprise. Sony, big surprise. The interesting thing that I found when I was actually going through this is that I expected to see Facebook on this list, and they're not. And neither is HTC, nor is Valve. So to see VR positioned so heavily, and I guess this is the point that I want to kind of end on. And we're also getting a little bit late here on my end of things, so I probably will cancel the rest of the stream at this point. But the part that I wanted to end on is if VR is being pushed this heavily, it's not just Sony that's doing that. Nintendo has talked about VR. Microsoft is going to do VR as well. And there's going to be a significant push from them to do that. That's what this document smells of to me, as well as, of course, the big political thing that goes out and try and get funding and try and get lobbying rules changed and try and, we get freaking Disney on there. Let's go ahead and extend Mickey Mouse another 100 years. Because, why not? Why bother with the public domain? But a document that talks this heavily about VR in such obfuscated terms is an industry that is trying desperately to make VR work and be in on the ground floor when it does. Microsoft, if they don't have, let me give you this as a prediction before I shut this one down. I predict very strongly that Microsoft will have a VR headset to display at E3 with the Scorpio launch. I think it'll happen, and I think that they'll have games to show off as well. Now, I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, but why not have a prediction out there? So that's all that I've got for you. This was a fun little interlude into talking about the ESA and their wonderful, wonderful, essential facts about the computer and video game industry for 2016 in the 2017 year. It was released today, fresh, hot off the presses. And yeah, the interesting thing about that whole VR page, and as I take a look over in chat and notice something, it's a good point. They didn't mention augmented reality at all. Wonder if that's included in their numbers. This has been the Feedback Loop. Thank you very much for checking this out. It's been a lot of fun. They're not getting any shorter for some reason or other. I kind of thought this was going to be like a half an hour. Turns out we're closer to an hour. My name is Tarmack. Thank you very much for watching. And please feel free to drop any comments down below talking about this topic, and I'm gonna keep this rolling because next week I want to do the game economies one. So drop your questions here. I'm gonna do the same thing on the news wrap up. I'll mention it again there, so you can put any questions or comments on economies of games leaving the game. So gold selling, auction house stuff, eBay selling accounts, CSGO gambling, all of that kind of stuff, because I want to talk a little bit about that next week to make up for not talking about this week. So I'm going to close this up and maybe do a quick little chat with some people on Twitch. Thank you very much for watching. Been a lot of fun. All right, folks, how's it going? I have to try and construct these videos so that they actually are things that I can upload onto the channel. So I apologize if it sounds like I'm talking to someone that is not the folks that are sitting here actually watching live, but it's good stuff. There's been lots of comments, and I do apologize for not being able to read a lot of this stuff while I'm just kind of going. But oh my God, the stats are so bad. It's so bad. It hurts me. It hurts me so deeply. I don't know. I don't think I have anything else for you guys at the moment. I think that I'm good to go. I need to probably go sleep. It's 9 o'clock on my side of the things, or my side of the world right now. So, where's my other bit? Here we go. Let me get myself out of here. So from here onwards, like I said, please do, when this goes up, comment down below of anything you want to talk about, or you want to see me maybe reference and stuff during the talk about the game economics piece, game economy leaving the game. That would be excellent. I don't have another feature creep going up this week, at least nothing that's come up, so don't expect anything until this video goes up on Saturday, and then of course the news wrap up on Sunday. And I think that's pretty much all I've got for you. So thank you very much for checking this out. Please do follow me here at Tarmack Gaming, and I'll see you next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.